Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're going to talk about issue number 44 of X-Force, written by Benjamin Percy, but before we dive into the story, I want to ask you a favor. If you enjoy this video, please leave a like and a comment to help the channel grow. So just to give you a quick recap, at this point in the story, Orcus has staged a violent incursion at the Hellfire Gala, slaughtering countless mutants and forcing many more off-world. But before X-Force could act, Colossus, under the control of his brother, Mikhail, led them into a trap. Now the few mutants remaining on Earth are international fugitives, scattered across the globe, while Domino, Sage, and Black Tom work to rescue their team from Mikhail's clutches. So with that said, this issue opens with Domino walking the streets of Moscow alone in the rain, following the events of the Hellfire Gala. And at this point in the story, as we all know, Orcus is the not official rulers of the world. And that is on full display in this issue, as Orcus set up several checkpoints throughout the city to help distinguish between friends and foes. So with the world completely on lockdown, Domino maneuvers through the alleyways in order to avoid anyone following her, for this is a Black Ops mission that is extremely important for the future of the mutant race. So with the target location in sight, Domino stops dead in her tracks. Now, the reason why she did this was not because she had concerns of safety, but rather because she questioned about X-Force as a whole. So despite the huge global conspiracy going down, she questioned if saving the dream as a whole was even worth it. So with that said, Sage tells Domino that she ran an algorithm a million different ways, but she also listens to her heart. And while doing that, she strongly believes they were on the verge of something great. And given that X-Force is Krakoa's Black Ops team, there is no greater time for them to return than now. So if they want any hopes of getting their country back, then they first will have to get their team back together. So following that motivational speech, an inspired Domino switches over to radio silence as she enters a laundry room. And once inside she asks for the massage schedule for that evening, and after receiving it she immediately knocks out the technician. So with the schedule in hand, we skip over to the target, exiting the sauna and entering the massage room. So with him alone, he proceeds to lay on the table in expectation of a massage, but unlucky for him, the feeling of a gun pressing the back of his head catches his attention. So with his head still face down on the table, Domino begins questioning the individual about his relationship with Colossus's brother, Mikhail. And almost instantly, like most politicians, he immediately started to distance himself from him, despite once being Mikhail's economic and political ally. But see, on a side note, he completely oversold his separation from the target, because he states that he renounces all mutants because he hates them, which encouraged Domino not to hold back in her interrogation for information. So with that going on, we transfer over to the man in question, and when we get there he is sitting on his throne with Colossus at his side. Now one thing about Mikhail you need to know is that he tried to take control of Russia, Krakoa, the world, and even the timeline, but see, fate had made other plans. So now Mikhail is forced to wait for what might come next. So in the meantime, Mikhail had to use his dimensional rifts as a safe haven for himself and a prison for others. But see, for mutants like Kid Omega, the prison wasn't necessary, for he was already in a mental cell of his own, due to him getting a new body. And as for mutants like Omega Red, he was given special treatment due to his betrayal of Mikhail after the 10 lives and 10 deaths of Wolverine. And speaking of Wolverine, we switch over to a Wolverine doing what she does best, cutting down Mikhail's soldiers. Now the reason why she is allowed to do this is because Mikhail's soldiers have a crazy healing factor that allows them to keep fighting. So in a way, she is keeping them in fighting condition. So with all that going down, we skip back over to Domino continuing her interrogation. And when we get there, we see that she completely worked him over until 2 onlookers entered the room. So with her cover blown, Domino had no choice but to open fire on the men before turning her attention back towards her target. So with no time to waste, Domino ripped the man's finger clear off and started to make her escape. Now the reason why this ring is important is because it has ties to Mikhail himself. So with the ring on her person, she made her way down the hallway, but unannounced to her, Orcus had arrived on the scene with one of their new Wolverine skeleton sentinels. So with the chase on, Domino does whatever she could to stay one step ahead of the murderous robot. So as chaos erupted in the hallway, Domino calls Sage for an immediate evacuation, because she is fully aware that she is no match for the sentinels. So with the robot hot on her heels, she makes her way into the bathhouse and uses her Krakoan arm to swing herself through a window and onto the roof. So with her crashing onto the roof, she quickly discovered that she was shot in the femoral artery during their crossfire. But luckily for her, she didn't have to wait long because medical treatment was already on the way. For Sage's jet was on the scene to save the day. So following that, we skip over to Domino waking up in X-Force mobile base in the Atlantic Ocean after losing a lot of blood. And by her side was Black Tom Cassidy attending to her injuries, and one thing we noticed about him right out the gate was that Black Tom was not in a good spot in his life, for he is no longer referring to himself in the third person. Now the reason why he is doing this is because after Krakoa was taken he was no longer connected to its nervous system anymore. So with that explanation, we see Domino checking in with Sage about the outcome of her mission. Now during their conversation, Domino brings up how she is tired of always getting beat up and wants to find a better way to accomplish her mission without taking personal L's. So with Domino down on herself, Sage takes her to the no-place tumor, which is said to cause cancer after prolonged exposure. So despite its major health implications, they also discovered that this place could also serve as a quiet room due to it being able to deaden most electric and telepathic transmissions. So because of the pros this place offers, they decided to store the ring here for safekeeping. Now while the ring was in their hands, Sage did run some preliminary scans on it, but to her surprise, the surge from the ring almost knocked out her network. And because of that, Sage thinks that the ring may be connected to something powerful, something she doesn't fully understand. So right when Domino was about to say Mikhail's name, Sage immediately stopped her in her tracks, because she thought it wasn't a good idea to say that name in the presence of the ring. So while X-Force is distracted with the ring, we transfer over to the Chronicler hard at work writing Colossus's story in the Dimensional Rift. So while he is doing that, Mikhail enters the room with his brother, Colossus, following behind him. And the first thing he orders for the Chronicler to do is drop his quill, because he wanted to ask him a question. He wanted to ask the Chronicler what if he changed his focus away from his brother and started to write for some high officials in Orcus. So with that said, Mikhail pulls out a huge stack of extensive profiles of the targets in question, alongside some blueprints of the stations and weapons technology. Now this was a huge problem with the Chronicler for several reasons. First and foremost was because he never wanted to write about Colossus to begin with, but he did, and he did it well. And secondly, if he was to drop it with no sense of conclusion, it would be an insult to his talent, as well as potentially dangerous for Colossus's health. So because he put so much time into Colossus, if he was to just stop writing, then Colossus may fall into a coma or even die. But see, this was not what Mikhail wanted to hear, because he already gave him the files that he thought were required for the Chronicler to form a connection with his victim. Because the Chronicler explains that he needs more than just paper to form a connection, but rather he needs to sit down in the victim's company and have a conversation with them in order to form some kind of companionship to make it work. So with Mikhail's hands tied, he goes on to explain how he will arrange his brother, Colossus, to stage a kidnapping of these individuals to help him accomplish his job, and as for Colossus's safety, if he dies while he is working on someone else, then so be it. So with that said, issue number 44 of X-Force comes to an end. Now when it comes to this issue, I thought it was okay for what it wanted to convey to us, the readers. But from a major story plot point, it fell kind of short. Now one thing I really liked about this issue was the way they finally explained how the Chronicler's powers worked. Because for the longest time, it was a little vague on how far his powers could reach. But one thing I am hoping will happen in the future is the Chronicler potentially teaming up with the Metal Man himself, Colossus, to take on Mikhail. So down in the comment section below, let me know your thoughts about this issue and what predictions you could have moving forward. So with that established, I hope you enjoyed this video, and please don't forget to leave a like and a comment if you want to see more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.